Welcome to another installment of the top 10 most submitted books into CGC. This is a video that I release every single month in which I run down those books that we are sending into CGC. And I will tell you that the list that I get directly from CGC actually includes about 20 books. However, we tend to focus on the top 10. With that said, there is some very interesting things happening in this month's list. Specifically, the list is dominated by Marvel. Dominated, I tell you. In fact, 15 of the 20 books on the list come directly from Marvel. 7 of those books actually feature Wolverine. And in addition to that, when you go a little bit deeper, what you see is that Boom Studios actually is the second most represented publisher on the list with 3 books. But the question is, where does DC's incredibly popular comic Nice House on the Lake actually fall on the list? Stay tuned because we are going to dig into all of that in this video. But before I actually get to any of those details, I want to acknowledge this video's sponsor. HipComic is a great website for buying and selling comics. In fact, the platform was developed by collectors for collectors, so you should have no problem finding and buying comics from any number of small businesses and local comic shops that sell comics on the platform. There is a link in the description of this video. Pay them a visit today. Number 10 on the list features a character who is making his first appearance on this list. We are specifically talking about Moon Knight issue number 1 from 1980. And this book gives us the origin of Moon Knight. It is also the first ongoing series for Moon Knight, who first appeared in Werewolf by Night issue number 32. This book may be appearing on the list because folks are starting to get excited about the upcoming Moon Knight show that will be debuting on the Disney Plus platform at some point in 2022. This 6-episode show will be the 19th TV show in the MCU and is part of the Marvel's Phase 4. Number 9 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 252. Now, this book could be on the list for any number of reasons, from the fact that Spider-Man is dope to the belief that people have that Spider-Man will be donning the black costume in an upcoming movie, potentially in a long-rumored Secret Wars movie. This might also be the reason why another black costume book or 2 made the list this month as well. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 252 is also the first time we see Spider-Man in the black suit in his regular series, and as such, this book is commanding a pretty high price, around $1,620, which is actually below the Go Collect FMV at the moment, which is $2,300. There is a dramatic fall off when you look at the value of a 9.6 versus that of a 9.8. A 9.6 has an FMV of around $675. Maybe the fall off is due to the fact that there are only 1,700 graded copies of a 9.8 on the census. I did a quick glance on HipComic, and there are a healthy number of raw and graded comics of this book on the platform. In fact, there are a couple of 9.8s as well. As I mentioned, there is a link in the description of this video. Speaking of Spidey's black costume, we might as well mention the number 8 book on the list, which happens to be Marvel Superheroes Secret War issue number 8 from 1984. This book, written by Jim Shooter, drawn by Mike Zeck, gives us the origin story of the black costume, which ultimately goes on to become Venom. At present, there are just over 19,000 copies of this book on the CGC census, with 4 graded 10s, 23 9.9s, and 5,100 9.8s. At present, the 9.8 is selling for less than the Go Collect FMV of $825. Number 7 on the list is yet another Spider-Man Venom book, but in this case, we are talking about the iconic Amazing Spider-Man issue number 300 from 1988. It will be interesting to see if this book remains on the list long term, and I say that because despite having some box office success, the most recent Venom movie, specifically Let There Be Carnage, has met with some mixed reviews from fans. But with that said, I think that this book will continue to perform despite having a high census population of around 26,000 copies. Now, what's interesting is that these copies range all the way from a 9.9 all the way down to a 0.5. But when you dig deeper into the data, what you see is that there are roughly 1,400 copies of this book at a 9.8, which might be a huge savings grace. It might also be the reason why this book is still pulling in some high numbers. A most recent sale of this book at a 9.8 was $7,000. I want to interrupt this video for just 1 minute to let you know that we are doing a giveaway this week. There is a video coming out from the channel this week in which we highlight 3 spec books that are blue ocean opportunities. All you have to do is watch that video and leave a substantive comment behind for an opportunity to win this spec book right here. This is The Hobbit, a book that was highlighted in a previous installment of this Blue Ocean spec series. Don't miss your opportunity to win this book. Number 6 on the list is Venom Lethal Protector. This shiny foil book from 1993 seems to trade hands a lot, especially in high grade, which can probably be attributed to the fact that there are nearly 7,000 copies of this book out there at a 9.8. In total, there are roughly 11,500 copies of this book on the census. Despite these numbers, this book's value seems to be hovering near its FMV of around $200 at a 9.8. Again, it will be interesting to see how this book performs as we put some distance between the Venom sequel that was released. I should also mention that this is the 3rd time this book has appeared on the top 10 list since December. It was actually on the list in June and July of 2021. Number 5 on the list is X-Men issue number 4, the second Wolverine-related book to actually break the top 10. And I definitely want to encourage you to stay tuned for the rest of the video to find out where those other Wolverine books happen to make the list. X-Men 4 is the first appearance of Omega Red, a character that was rumored to be appearing in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier TV show. It's this rumor that prompted the book to make the list back in April and May of 2021. My assumption here is that people believed that this character was going to appear in the Black Widow movie, which is why people potentially started to send it in. Now we know that Omega Red isn't appearing in the Black Widow movie, so it'll be interesting to see how this book actually performs into the future. With that said, this book continues to perform well at a 9.8 despite recent sales that show it coming in at less than the current FMV of $350. A quick glance at the census data shows us that there are roughly 3,300 copies at a 9.8 and about 6,700 graded copies overall. If you're enjoying this content, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and don't be shy about sharing it with your friends on social media. The number 4 book on the list is X-Men issue number 1, the best-selling comic of all time. This book sold 8.1 million copies back in the day, and most recently has come back into the spotlight thanks to Jim Lee partnering up with the owner of Torpedo to sell off all 4 of the connecting covers from this legendary comic. When you dig into the data, it is a little tough for me to discern which of the covers is being sent into CGC because they were all essentially released around the same time. So I'm not able to tell you specifically which of the 4 covers is going in. We just know that it is happening. To that point, this book is relatively inexpensive. The FMV for the 4 covers ranges somewhere between $70 all the way up to $130. Generally speaking, this is not a hard book to get your hands on unless you're talking about the newsstand version of these covers, which is a little harder to come by. Number 3 on the list is another highly printed book from back in the day, and we are specifically talking about Spawn issue number 1. When you look at the data, what you see is that there are just over 19,000 copies of this book on the CGC census, with 10 of those copies being a 9.8. Despite these figures, the sales data for Spawn is pretty robust. There is active sales data at most grades, and the 9.8 seems to be just below its FMV of $250. Now, here's what's crazy. This Spawn book, specifically Spawn issue number 1, has appeared on the list. This video, for a long time. We are specifically talking about 10 different appearances. This book has been on the list every single month except for one since December of 2020. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, this is because Todd McFarlane has done some signings and things like that. Maybe there are other creators that have done multiple signings that have not had books on the list for 10 different months. There is some magic, some special stuff that is happening with Spawn right now. And I will tell you, the book does not always break the top 10, but it is somewhere on the list, as I mentioned. Number 2 on the list is the only DC book to make this month's list, and we are specifically talking about Nice House on the Lake from James Tynion. And I can tell you, this book is, I think, a surprise breakout book for this year. I personally have enjoyed reading this book, and I think others have as well. And I'm not sure that that was expected, to be honest with you, when this book was released. At present, the sales data on this book is pretty weak. Go Collect is showing only 6 sales, specifically at a 9.8 with an average sales price of $141. The CGC census data is also pretty low at just about 300 books. Both of these numbers actually surprised me because, as I mentioned, this is a really good read, and I think folks, including myself, are enjoying it, yet we see relatively low volume in terms of sales. We see a low sales price, and then we also see a relatively low number of this book on the census. So that is a little surprising to me, but it will be interesting to see if this book maintains its position on the list, especially with the book going on a little bit of a hiatus because James Tynion is moving over to Substack. And the number 1 book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man issue number 361, the first appearance of Carnage. And I'm not surprised that this book is on the list. And I say that because its popularity has really been driven by all of the excitement around the Let There Be Carnage movie that recently came out. Now, what is a little surprising is that the book actually came in the number 1 spot, given that the book was released back in 1992, combined with the fact that there are close to 22,000 copies of this book already on the census. And when you look at some of the sales data, what you start to see is that this book might be on a downward trend. And I say that because the most recent sales are actually occurring below the current Go Collect FMV of $1,050. It'll be interesting to see how this book performs based upon the mixed reviews, based upon the volume that is on the census as we move further and further away from the release of the movie. As I alluded to at the top of this video, there are a couple of Wolverine-related comics on this list, and we've already spoken about 2 of them, specifically X-Men issue number 1 and X-Men issue number 4. Now, I want to highlight the other books that also made the list. And we're going to start things off with the 17th book on the list, that being Uncanny X-Men issue number 266, the second appearance and first cover of Gambit. Next up, in the 15th spot, we have Uncanny X-Men issue number 282, the first cover and cameo of Bishop. In the 14th spot, we have Wolverine, the limited series issue number 1. Number 13 is Wolverine 1, the ongoing series. And in the 11th spot, we get one of my personal favorites, Marvel Comics Presents issue number 72, the start of the Weapon X story arc. And I am honestly curious why you all think so many Wolverine books made this month's list. I don't know that I have ever seen this many books associated with the exact same character appear on the list. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are, so be certain to leave those thoughts behind. As we close out, I want to again thank the sponsor of this video, Hip Comic, for putting me in a position to be able to release this content on an ongoing basis. There is a link in the description. Pay them a visit today. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do that on Instagram at Reggie Collects. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of the content that comes out from my channel every single week.